Hi everybody, thanks for joining me for my Bits and Bobs episode 40. Um, I've been working on this quilt from January 2024, making all the elements of it, and then I I always knew it was going to be a collage quilt because I've loved collages for forever. And so then when I put it all together on the quilt, I started when I had a bunch of elements, I started making videos talking about them. And then when I put them all together on the quilt and started stitching them down, I started making these progress videos. So we're up to number 40. As recently we went across the top finishing elements and down the right side, and now we're on the bottom right corner to choose what I'm going to do next. And as I pointed out before, the things on the back underneath get done first, or at least partially gets done. So this little Dresden was a panel, and the different elements on it, there were different pictures and a bunch of these. So I had it in my collection for ages, and I never did anything with it. So I thought it'd be fun to put one of them on a doily and then make that an element. So that's what I'm going to do for this week as my progress, and then we'll work on the additions from there, and I'll work my way across the bottom because the quilt is pretty much stitched all the way down to here except for the smaller pieces. So that's what my plan is for this week. But I'm also excited at the moment to share. I finally came up with an idea of what to do with those two ticking fabrics that I was mentioning a couple weeks ago, probably. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'll show you my plan. And it's funny because it wasn't at night while I was sleeping that this came to me. It came to me because these were sitting on top of the ticking on my tray, and I noticed how well the tea-dyed pink thread matched the pink ticking, and then not this gray one, but the regular blue matched the blue ticking. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be neat if I could combine all of those together? And that's when my plan came to me. This is called a Rising Star block, and on my sampler I have a 6-inch version of it. So I took that template and I shrunk it. Now at first I thought I was going to do this half-size one, which makes the block 3 inches tall, the little piece 3 inches tall. Then when I printed it out, I thought, no, that's a little too tiny and fiddly. I'm probably going to work with, I did 3/4%, so that turned into this one, and that makes this 4.5 inches tall. But then when I drew it out on paper, I thought, this is kind of too big. I'm not loving how big this is. But at the same time, because I was trying to think of an embroidery, this is what came to mind. This flower. I think I have a little drawing of it there. So done with lazy daisy stitches, a French knot, and a pistol stitch probably, but I think that might be too long, so then I'll just do stem stitch down so that they all meet in the middle. And I drew the flower on the smaller version and really liked it, and then I started to think, well, maybe I won't like it as much with the longer stem on the bigger one. So that got me thinking, and then I thought, well, I should see what looks best with this fabric that I want to use. So I took my little drawing and I put it up to the window, and I compared the two. But because I can't put it up to the window for you, I made little frames. So when I was thinking it was going to be the big one with the stripe in the middle, that's what it'll look like. if I use the big template. The little template with the stripe in the middle is this one. And when I first did it, I was sure that I was going to like the bigger one more, but when I actually compared, I think the smaller one is much more charming in the showing of less of the stripes like this one. So fiddly as it might turn into, I've decided I'm going with the smaller version and make it this 3-inch one. It's so charming when it just has the one big stripe down the center and then the two smaller, as opposed to the one big down the center, two smaller, and then just touches there. To me, yes, it shows more fabric, but it's not quite as charming. So the plan is to alternate blue, pink, blue, pink, blue, pink with all the stripes, like I showed with the center like that, and then with the flower embroidered in the center with the stems down in the opposite color. So the pink thread will be on the blue and the blue thread will be on the pink. But before I do any of that, I have to tea dye this, because all I did was this little tester piece. All right, so that's the plan. I will either stitch some of the block down that I'm planning or work on this. Either way, I'm coming back to show you my progress. I've begun to stitch this little Dresden piece, Dresden on a doily. I've stitched all around the edge. I still want to stitch around the edge of the doily. I didn't get to that yet, but I did do this stitching, was actually drawn like it was part of the block, so I just did my embroidery over it. And just now I've did the same thing as I did over here, where the embroidery had already been done, but I did one more strand of floss and overdid it, like stitched over the previous stitch. So you can already see it's pulled it in and given it some depth. And now what I'm going to do, and it wasn't on the block as you can see, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to take that design, the running stitch, and I'm going to stitch a dark running stitch between each of the blades of the Dresden. And I think that'll just add some super charm to this piece. So that's how far I am. I'll see how much I can get done later this afternoon into the evening, and then tomorrow for sure I have to upload. So I'll see how far I get. But I also wanted to share, let's put this to the side. I did get to play with my ticking on the weekend, and interesting enough, I had this piece and two small pieces, and I was able to use the two small pieces, and I still have this to use another day, so I'm happy about that. I did tea dye the pink. You can see the difference between before tea dyeing and after tea dyeing. So I used those on the block, and here's what I made. It's just a darling little star. And that's going to go on the quilt somewhere. I'm not 100% sure where. I haven't even tried it yet, but I just, ooh. Isn't that just so charming? I love that that idea came to me. All right, I will get some more stitching on this done and see how far I get. Here's my progress. You can see I finished the quilting of each of the rays of the Dresden, and it's so much more charming, as I predicted. That really made a difference. It was cute before. I never did say why this is part of my quilt, other than the fact that it was a panel that was in my collection. I didn't buy it. It was one of those things I inherited from another stitcher. I'm always happy to take on other people's treasures and see what I can do with them. And was this one, but it had been in my stash for a long time. But there's another reason, two other reasons that I chose to put this on my special quilt too. One, I did want to have a Dresden on this quilt, mostly because I have a series on my site called Victoriana Dresdens, and I've got a whole bunch of different Dresden's blades shapes that I've made different things out of. So all the different patterns are there. And so that kind of was one of those designs that had to be represented on my quilt. But I especially love this one because, as you know, I love matchy-matchy, and each one of these fabrics are these tiny little prints, almost the same color as the next one, but not the same print. And there's no way I could have duplicated that out of my collection. I have a good collection, but these were just charming little blueprints. So that's why I wanted to include this one. All right, if you're wondering why my hand's coming from the side, it's because Amber's sleeping in my chair right there, so I just didn't want to disturb her. All right, that's it for this week. Happy stitching, everyone. And if you want to see my next progress, I should have another video next week. Thanks for watching.